there are so many times you hear athletes talk about their experiences in college and the glitz and the glamour. But what you don't hear about is the other side of that story when you have to grind it out for 4 or 5 years of being at a school where a lot of the guys that you signed with when you were a freshman are no longer there when you're a senior, but you still got to put your helmet on and your pads on. You got to get up and get ready for work and consistently put the work in. And that's the story we're going to be sharing today with Jake Pele. Jake's joining the show to share his experience as a former collegiate athlete, because what he experienced in college as a football player, it helped him for the rest of his life, whether it was in law enforcement, whether it's in sales, whether it's in coaching, which he's doing now. We're going to learn about his business called In the Trenches Academy, where they're helping the offensive and defensive linemen here in the Treasure Valley of Idaho. So if you're here in the Treasure Valley, stay tuned for that, because that's a really important training program that they have put together, and you guys want to hear more about this. This is a really cool interview. I've known Jake through various media sources and whatnot, but this is the first time I've actually got to chat with him, and I'm so grateful that he joined the show. This is a super awesome opportunity. I'm grateful for all of you guys who have tuned in over the years. We're almost to 8 years running of this show, right? We started this in January of 2017. So if you could do me a favor, hit the subscribe button wherever you're listening to this on. If you're on YouTube right now and you're watching me, hit the follow button, please. I'm trying to get this up to 1,000 subscribers. That's my next milestone. I know it's going to take some time, but it would be helpful if you guys could hit the follow button, share it with your friends and family, and get ready, because this is the Game Time Guru. So,
what time is it? Game time!
This is the Game Time Guru podcast, where I interview sports figures from all over the world to help deliver a panoramic view on sports. So whether you're a former athlete, one of the crazies, or simply a casual sports fan, this is the perfect show for you as we peel back the curtains and learn from our guests every single week. I'm your host, Shane Larson, and I'm helping you see sports through a different lens. What's up, everybody? Welcome out to another episode of the Game Time Guru podcast. Shane Larson here, host of the show. We're almost 8 years into this show at the time of this recording. I'm super excited to bring another interview to you guys, bring some value to you guys, and teach you guys some things from an amazing guest here. As you guys heard in the introduction, very special opportunity to learn from a guy that I've met here locally in Idaho through the sports world. Get to hear about his athletic career as well as what he's doing on the business front to help the younger athletes. And super stoked to bring him on. Known the guy through, like the various interconnections that we have here. And first time I actually got to speak to him on the show, and I couldn't be more excited. His name's Jake Pele, and we're bringing him on. So, Jake, thanks for joining the show, man.
Thanks for having me, Shane. Appreciate it, man.
Heck yeah, brother. So we say it in the introduction. You're a man of many titles, former collegiate football player, co-owner, co-founder of In the Trenches, and you're, a father, husband, like all the things, right? You got all these titles, but first I want to unbox one of them, and let's go back and talk about you as a football player. That's where I know you in the sports world, especially the high school football scene. And I want to go back and talk to you as the football player that you are and that you were. But before we even got to college, which is where you played your football at Idaho State, which is out of Pocatello, Idaho, for those who are listening across the country or across the globe. Idaho State is a school here in Pocatello, Idaho. Not my favorite city, but we won't go there. It's just, it's a small little school there in Pocatello, Idaho. But I want to talk about before that. So Jake, let's rewind the clock a little bit with you to start the podcast up a little bit and kind of learn about your football background and your sports background growing up. So as a kid, was football your main sport, or were you a multi-sport athlete?
Right. So I guess first is I was born in California, but I was raised actually in Seattle, Washington. Two cities primarily, Burien and Auburn, Washington. Growing up, a lot of siblings, 4 sisters, and I have a brother. And one household. At any time we have a lot of heads at the table or in the building. Sports was kind of a forefront growing up, but we never specialized until my senior year of high school. So from when I was a youth athlete, leading all the way to high school, sports is every season we had a sport. So, fall was football. Before I actually started growing a little bit, I played a little basketball. I used to think I was Allen Iverson. Unfortunately, when that little growth spurt hit, it went to wrestling, especially in high school. And then, in the spring always was track and field. And so for me growing up, we always had something to do. And, growing up, it was also baseball. There was a time where I played that because my older brother was really good at it. And just dipped into everything a little bit, especially being young. Gotta dip into all the sports and figure out which one I like. And I didn't like football originally. I hated hitting. So
So
it took a
talk
little
about
time.
that. Like what changed for you, I guess, because it's unique, right? As you and I are both, you know, we're around the high school scene more now as we're older. So it seems like things have shifted in the landscape of high school athletics, especially. I mean, even in youth athletics, where kids are
Hmm.
specializing a little sooner than they used to.
Hmm.
But what shifted for you if you didn't like football? When did the shift happen, and what actually happened to make the shift happen where you were like, okay, football's not so bad. I actually enjoy hitting people now. Like,
Yeah,
what was it that took?
I think, honestly, I do have some very hard feelings by the way of specializing. I'll try and be, very respectful and understand people's, wishes. Everyone wants the best for whatever route they choose and journey they choose. But I think it just goes to like a life lesson. Football is something that maybe I did not like, wasn't good at originally. Struggled to find my piece. But I think after you show up and know you have to attack it every single day, it's a result that you're not going to see immediately. And I think speaks a lot to later in life. Something you don't see when you're a kid by any means. Like, trust me, I hated football so much that, like, if I had a bad practice or something, my dad would make me walk home, like from youth football. And I'm in full pads and everything, walking home, and I'm angry. I'm just a little kid at the time, don't really care. I mean, I don't know. Some people might think that's extreme, but where I was kind of raised, you had to, you didn't have a choice to, kind of like the choice of not pursue this. Not that this was going to be the sport. You just in life, you're going to be handed a deck of cards, and you're going to have to attack it. And so, I think as time went on, I found my peace in myself and who I was on the field. And once I figured out that, and I wasn't trying to, I'd say, like, we all have motivation, but I wasn't trying to please other people necessarily. I just realized, like, this is for me. And then when I came at inner peace of that, and I started focusing on what I wanted to be, and figured out from people around me that are in a good inner circle of me with good motivation factors, like, everything just started clicking. Like, I figured out a structure of workouts, who to follow in the school, who to do all that, and that started from middle school, really early as middle school to high school. Back in the day, it's not as common here, I don't think, but you used to play middle school football with your city, right? Like, whatever the little league tryouts are. Back where I was from was Auburn Panthers. And then after that practice, or that was might have been an evening practice, but you had middle school football with your school. So you might have bounced from one practice from middle school football first to your city practice after. And so you would dip and dab. You'd have games on a Thursday in the middle of the week, and then you'd have your Saturday games with your youth football team. So it mirrored each other, kept you busy. I don't know. I think eventually you keep trying something. Eventually you're gonna fall in love with it. I had a lot of good people around me though, so that helped a lot.
Oh, it's so interesting. Yeah. And growing up, I mean, we didn't do that here. I mean, it was you either played Optimist football or you played middle school football. It wasn't both. I don't even know if you were allowed to play, or at
Oh
least
yeah,
nobody ever did. It was just Optimist football. And then once you were old enough to play middle school, you got to make a choice to
yeah,
go play
man.
middle
I
school
got,
ball.
I got. I just remember swapping out the pads and the helmets, and all of us did that growing up. It kept you real busy, man. Like, school get over at 2 o'clock, you're straight to youth practice, and then you're waiting in the parking lot, whether it's your parents picking you up or some other family member or family that's going to the same spot pick you up, and you guys are headed to the next practice.
Man,
It was
that's so
fun.
cool. Um, Auburn, Washington. Little side note on that. I've been there once for a basketball tournament just last year. It was a year ago
Yeah.
this month, and it was for a basketball tournament for club ball. I coach club basketball and went up there for. I've never been there, but went up there for Idaho Premiere, and we went to the Fieldhouse USA, which is like connected to their mall, and it's this like sweet facility. And I was like, wow, dude. So anyway, just as a side note, that like changed my perspective. And because of being in Auburn, Washington, that's like a business goal of mine is to run something just like they had there in Auburn, Washington, here in the area. I know they got Metal Sports Complex for all the basketball fans here, but like they don't do it like they do in Auburn and the other locations. But Fieldhouse USA, shout out to Fieldhouse USA. Got to get one of those here because it was incredible. So anyway, Auburn, Washington. It's funny you said that because I didn't know anybody from Auburn, but I went there last year and I thought it was awesome. So as you were getting recruited, what was the recruiting process like for you, Jake, when you were going through high school and getting ready to play? And at what point did you know you wanted to play the next level? At first, you didn't even like football, and then you ended up playing collegiate football. So at what point did you know that you, one, could play at the next level? And then what was the recruiting like, too, for you?
Yeah. So, man, football in high school is interesting because I had a former head coach of my freshman year in high school. I'm only 5'8", 135 pounds when I'm a freshman in high school when I get there. And I'll never forget his name. Andrew Sage was his name. And it just goes to show that when a coach believes in you, I don't know, it goes a long way. And he had told me, just wait till you hit your growth spurt. So I was like, okay. At the time, I'm playing linebacker and running back. So in between those, I basketball and everything. I progressed as a football player. I grew pretty, I guess, big compared to where I was because sophomore year I'm 6 foot, 185. Junior year I'm 6'1", 215. Senior year I'm 6'1", 250. I guess that depends on measurements too, because let's see, 6 foot and a half, 6'1". But in the program we put 6'2". Got to make it look good. So really the turning point for me, and here's the craziest part about this, Shane, is I wasn't the best football player when I was in high school. Like, I was not the best football player in my city by any means. We took a different route, my family and I, on what high school I went to, the regiment we took in. When you talk about just certain things culturally, we just took a different route to how we wanted to get things done from what my parents were seeing from surrounding factors. I didn't know nothing. I'm just doing what they tell me. So we went a different route about that. We went to the school that was really good academically and probably not so good football. We didn't have a winning season for a long time. Rather going across town to the local high school that's really good at football, powerhouse. I mean, great kids. Those are all my, but I wasn't the best in my city yet in 2009. I'm the only one that signed a scholarship that year out to go somewhere collegiately. So I wasn't the best, just put it like that. So junior year, leading up into my sophomore to junior year, I had followed a couple people that went to the same school as me. David Paulson, he played tight end at University of Oregon. He was a 7th round draft pick, a 3-year starter at U of O. If you looked at him, you'd be like, well, who is this guy? But he's actually, if you do the research, a phenomenal guy. Played a lot of games, played a lot in the league with the Steelers. The other was Alex Terrian. He played offensive line at Montana State. Good dude. And the other was Billy Gonzalez. He played wide receiver at Ohio, the Ohio, not State. But so I had followed that group that kind of had led a structure of how to do things. So freshman year going into sophomore year, that meant we were up at 5 a.m. before school, in the school, working out together. Because it's not like it was today, not like it is today, where you have some very successful sports performance facilities, like off the field, or Rocket Armor being contracted out to help run the workouts for these schools. It was the coaches, and the coaches are teachers, and so they're doing the best they can. That's all we know. It's all good and gravy. So whatever, we're making the best of it, and what we're doing is we're following David's plan that he got from Oregon, because at the time he was getting recruited from Stanford, Cal Berkeley, University of Washington, and a couple others. And so all we did was follow the script. Now you had to wake up and do everything. So along the lines of following some influential people that I wanted to be like, it kind of worked out to where senior year it all clicked for me. I played running back and I played middle linebacker. I'd say, a pretty good year, but what that sprung into the off season was then I really got to learn what recruiting was like, and it was a little bit different back in the day compared to what it is now. Honestly, I thought I was headed, to be candid with everyone on this interview. Like, I thought I was headed to Puget Sound University. Division III, I had a good amount of money from it, good grades. I was always a good grade kid. And they did a lot of good things there that made me happy. I wanted to be a dog at the University of Washington, but I'm realistic. I just wasn't good enough. I actually had a walk on to go there, but it wasn't in the cards. And then actually I learned about this conference called the Big Sky Conference. because the Big Sky Conference is not what it is now, what it was then for football. And next thing you know, a connection of a coach because I had a really good game. And this is kind of funny how things work where kids don't understand. I had a really good game against a perennial powerhouse football team called Lakes High School. Or sorry, it was Lakes High School and then it was Federal Way High School through John Meager and through the Miller family head coaches. I had that good of a game against them. They actually had passed their name off to a connection on staff member at Idaho State University. So insert not getting much heavily recruited, think I'm going to go Division III on a full ride scholarship essentially. So I'm happy. And then next thing you know, come November, December, I have Eastern Washington at my basketball games because because I know I'm actually going to get a scholarship, so I'm not going to go wrestle. The wrestling's hard,
Yeah.
and so I go back to basketball because I just I'm just having fun. So I have Eastern Washington coming out. I have Idaho State coming out, and then I had a couple of discussions with some other schools about walking on at a FBS. And then here's Idaho State that comes in with John Zamberlin, who's Meridian High School's football coach, who sat in my living room when I was 17 years old and told me, his vision and just that he would take care of me and stuff like that. And it kind of unfolded in that aspect because I promise you, when I tell you I wasn't a highly recruited player, I was not until my senior year when I had some really good games. And then people started talking about it more than me. I mean, I was just a kid just playing because I was trying to figure it out. And then it really didn't click until college, like mentally, physically, and everything like that. But high school recruiting for me was interesting. Is I it just was unique in my own way, my own journey. But I mean, it was fun. It's funny how things work out because I thought I was going to be a Puget Sound logger or something. Go enjoy it in Tacoma and just have a good education.
Man, it's like what I love about that though, and I think it's something that's worth taking note of if you're listening to the podcast is that not everyone's journey is the same, and it's okay for it to have its ebbs and flows and like to shift around if you're open minded and whatnot. And yeah, it doesn't always end up like you think it's going to end up, but ultimately, I mean, if you take care of business, it'll be all right. Like, I mean, there's a big difference between Idaho State and Puget Sound, that's for sure. There's like a big difference.
No doubt.
But another thing that I think is worth taking note of is how, like, yeah, there are some schools, at least here in the Treasure Valley of Idaho, that they do contract out sports performance, programs like Off the Field and Rock and Armor and so forth. But not every one of them does, right? Not all of them can. Not all of them can afford it. It's all based on budget and stuff like that. And the one thing I would say is it's interesting that you, along with any other person that I've talked to who's played at a high level, wake up before school and you're working out. That is such a consistent and common theme amongst the successful athletes and programs of those who I've covered on the show. I would recommend that those who are listening, whether you're a parent, a coach, a player, anyone who has aspirations to play next level, or even just whatever that means to you, if that's playing varsity as a high school athlete, or if that's playing at the next level, you want to get to the next level in college or professional, you've got to be able to put in the work outside of the normal hours of what you're doing. That's just how it's going to be. That's just how it is. You have to be able to do that. And I think that's kind of funny that you said that because even when you didn't have a program, it was your coaches, you learned what it was going to take to play and to be able to compete. You got to separate yourself. Now, Idaho State, Pocatello, Idaho. Okay. Yeah.
Good time.
Funny good times over in Pokey, I'm sure. So I have a buddy of mine. I graduated high school in 2006 from Meridian, but I was young. I was 17 when I graduated high school. I was a little bit younger. So a friend of mine who graduated 2 years later was actually almost the same age as me. His name's AJ Storms.
Yeah, he's a baller.
I'm sure you probably know AJ. He played around the same era as you.
Yeah, played 3 years with him.
Yeah. So AJ, he played quarterback and safety for Meridian, and he graduated 2 years after. He was a sophomore when I was a senior, but he played safety for us when we won the state championship, and then he was quarterback for his state championship team years later. Anyway, it's interesting to hear his stories of like Idaho State and whatnot back then. At the time, the program was struggling to get wins, but there was no shortage of athletes on the field. Like, so yourself, and I remember him, he's just a stellar athlete. And he told me that he's like, dude, there were athletes. And even though we weren't winning, we weren't stringing together a ton of wins every season, we were having a good time competing. And he was telling me stories. So I want to hear from you, Jake, your experience. What was the biggest transition going from your high school season to that of playing at Idaho State, your first year over there. What was the biggest transition? Did you have any
Yeah.
shockers like, whoa, this is the college game or anything
No
of that
doubt. Man, yeah. So just to give you a quick heads up, by the way, when you like talk about AJ, just so you know, because now I coach high school football out here. I've been blessed to coach at Rocky Mountain High School. Now I've been blessed to coach under John Zamberlin at Meridian. When you think about some of the like the mindset and the attitude that sometimes I wish these kids would have, because you think of AJ Storms or Luke Austin, that's not a lot of these kids know who he is. But if you do the research and actually find out who he is, you'll know that like, you know the kid they're dogs, like but there's a mentality behind that, where they come from, what they have had to do to get to that point, being underestimated and things like that. So just so you know, it was fun because I crossed paths with people like an AJ, like a Luke Austin, who's a Skyview kid that was a walk-on that started as a true freshman at Idaho State. True freshman, like the dude's bald as 18-year-old freshman, like coming in from Idaho and Scott. Like, I didn't know Caldwell Idaho coming in and balling out, right? So like meeting some walks of life at Idaho State's been awesome. But just so you guys know, like there's a lot of pride in that, in this valley, in this state, that I think that some people might take for granted if you really don't get. I guess if you don't pay attention to it, especially some of them local kids, like like it's just cool to see. So, I mean, Idaho State, like a shock factor. Back in when we were on high school, right? We didn't have no college regimen in high school. And what I mean by that is when you take what we're doing in high school football here, even from with Coach Smart at Timberline to, probably out in Coach in CUNA to Rocky to Meridian, we all have gotten to this point where kids are watching film, all right? Whether it's at lunch or after practice, kids either have weights before practice. And this is not something that was, this is like, you're going to do this, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's ran by someone else or not, right? They have all these structures of things to elevate their game in season, right? Back in high school, when I was there, I promise you, like the coaches watched film and brought it to us. If we watched film, it was like at lunch, 20 minutes, right? Nothing like crazy, but we didn't have like when practice was done, we were done. There was no extra lift. That was it. So like at least a regimen or a structure of understanding what this commitment's going to look like at the next level. That was never there. You just played football and kept it moving, right? So when you walked into the door and you had, you're a freshman. First off, it's Pocatello, Idaho, so that was like it was different. My parents when they didn't come with me on my official visit. When they came with me to drop me off, they walked into the Walmart, and I love Pokey. Got all my friends there still though. It's changed a lot, but they like looked around and they kind of looked at me and looked around and looked at me, and I'm just like, yeah, we're gonna be all right. Like this is great. We got a great coach. The sheriff, or he wasn't the sheriff yet, but he was a deputy in town. Tony Manu was there, who I had met on my official visit. So they had done some things to stack it up to look good, and they also had recruited football players to stay around to work there and be there. So when you walk into that area, it's just from a big city or bigger cities. I mean, even from Boise to Pocatello, it's going to take some time to getting used to. Secondly, is the college structure is way different than what you're going to be used to. Because I'd say in high school football, you have someone telling you you're going to get up and do this, right? Everyone here, oh, why are you late? This, and this. College football, you're going to wake up. You have a set structure, but they're not going to hound you because if you're not going to show up, they're just out recruit you. Like I think that's the biggest thing about football that people miss in the life lesson is a lot of people can be terrible in their 9 to 5 job, terrible, right? If I was terrible on Saturday, they were finding someone to sign on February to replace me, right? So like that mindset when you have as a kid and a competitor, like you have to think about that when you're like, man, boy, I'm trying to I'm trying to play, I'm trying to do something with this or and stay on scholarship too because scholarships are also only 1 year generally, 1 or 2 year mixes, right? So you got a lot, especially if you're not the star player initially in your career. So there's just so much about it that goes through your head when you're growing and growing and growing. And then as you are starting to realize like how this game plays out, because the speed of the game is way different. The speed of the game is tremendously different. If you're not confident in what you're doing, which comes from your preparation, you're getting exposed, like period. Like there's nothing you can do about it. They can call the perfect play, and you can look out there at the kid, and he's like, he doesn't know what he's doing, or he's not here. Look who I have on the field. That's the worst feeling, right? Is when a coach looks at you and says, "Oh man, like that's who I have on the field for this." Like man, that sucks. So like the mentality of it, the structure of it from classes. When remember, so there's a weird thing in academics that I've noticed now. I say weird respectfully. If you feel differently, anyone on this, I'm very sorry, but there is a weird thing that I found when I was in the schools is now you can retake tests or turn in late assignments at like any given point within semesters in the West Data School District, right? Like, so kids can turn in late assignments with no penalties. You can retake a test with no penalty, and it's the same test, right? If you fail in college, if you walk up and you show them you fail that test, you're done. There's no talking. Like maybe you can get a makeup, maybe, but you are now focused on the midterm to make up your grades. So it's just like different pressures, and you turn into college. You go to college. Some of these athletes don't realize it. You're sure you're a college athlete, great, but when you sit down, they give you a syllabus, right? And you have due dates, 4 due dates. That's the last time they talk about it. You know, the last time those teachers will tell you, don't forget you got this test. Don't forget you have this due, whatever. And if you're traveling, you got to make sure you let them know, hey, I'm going to be out of town on this date or this. You have to be on top of it. So there's clear communication. They know you're paying attention. And then if there needs to be wiggle room, whether it's an extended due date, whatever it is, that there's room, right? But like the structure of athletics is just something that a lot of these kids I don't think are as familiar with, and that was a huge wake up call.
I'm so glad you shared that, man. It's super insightful. There's a couple things I want to unbox, Jake. First off, for those who don't know, and I'm sure there's quite a few that might be listening to the show for the first time just because of who you are and stuff. So when I was in college, I ended up not going to play basketball in college. But when I was at Boise State, there's a whole story behind that. But when I was at Boise State, they had a club boxing team. I'd been fighting for Golden Gloves for 2 years already. And I decided I was going to go try out for the club team. I ended up being the team captain as a freshman. We didn't really have a ton of experience out there, so that wasn't hard to be a captain as a freshman. But it was kind of a cool experience, club boxing at Boise State. We were the Boise State Boxing Club. We fought UNLV, U of I. There's some good schools out there that we'd fight, but it was a club sport, right? So it was what it was. But even that, I tell people, I'm like, dude, it wasn't even a full-time athlete. There was no scholarship. It was 3 nights a week and a Saturday morning. It was Monday, Wednesday, Friday practices after school. It was at 4:30 to 6. Sometimes 6:30, and then you go home. Like that was your training each time. And then Saturday mornings we would spar for 2 hours. And so just like 4 days a week, just 3 nights a week and 4 days a week of that on top of the academic side of things. I got myself so screwed up in academics that I didn't do any of my assignments. I ended up flunking one class, which was art, which is so dumb. It was called art history, but it was so hard. I thought I was going to take this class. It was going to be so easy my freshman year. I wasn't ready for just the college life. I was working. I was going to school, working and boxing. And then I ended up getting put on academic probation. So if I didn't have a scholarship or nothing. So I was out there on a student loan my freshman year. And so I couldn't get a student loan until I got my academics up. So my freshman year, I literally got put on academic probation after my first semester. So I had to come up with my own money for the rest of school. And then I served a church mission, came back. And that's why I had to go to College of Western Idaho instead of going back to Boise State, because I couldn't get a student loan. And so once I was able to get it all done. So anyway, my whole point of that is I have a whole story there is that I understand that I was so shell shocked, Jake, just with the load of work and the lack of they're just going to make you be accountable. Like you said, they don't tell you about here's your syllabus, here's your work you got to get done. Cool, you're playing your sport, you're doing your thing. That's awesome. The teachers don't care about that. They're like, that's awesome. They'll support you. They just need you to get your assignments done. And the college workload can be kind of hard. So what you were saying is even the high school now, that's crazy because that's not how it is in college. And a lot of kids get shell shocked when they get to college because they're used to a certain thing. It's not going to work. You guys got to be used to you got to be holding yourselves accountable, take ownership over some things, and be ready for the academic side as well as the athletics. Now, the other thing that you had mentioned was the speed of the game and watching film and so forth. It is so interesting you say that because everyone I talk to and the kids that I coach for basketball, even it's a different sport, but even at the junior college level, Jake, it's so much faster now. And it's just so much different. So you have to be able to be prepared to watch film and study the game and be able to play at a high level because the athletes nowadays, for some reason, they're coming in there hot, quick. And I mean, if you want to compete, you got to be ready
Mhm.
for that, or else you're going to get caught in a bad
Yeah.
situation. I remember talking to Kamale Correa
Oh
on the
yeah,
show.
KC.
Yeah, KC was talking to me about when he went to the when he was drafted, sorry, by the Ravens, and he was like, dude, just like not understanding different coverages and like being like you might understand he watched his film, but he's not used to it. It was the same thing you were just saying. It's like
Yeah.
he's not in the right position. Boom, it's so fast that like if you can't afford to make a mistake or be a step late in certain levels
Yeah.
of the game, obviously. And so similar concept. Like you've got to be able to do all of that stuff so that you don't get caught in those situations because they'll just okay, cool. We'll get the next person that's
Man.
coming up. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and film that next day. Oh man, you just waiting for it on the big screen. You're just waiting for it, and you're just hoping like some glitch happens or something happens to where the coach can't watch it because they will. It is a college film session is not for the weak, and I'm sure the league is the same. But as we've probably seen on Hard Knocks, and a lot of my mutual friends, your mutual friends, can probably attest to, even KC, it's not for the weak, man. You got another grown man telling you just all these things. You got, whatever name in the book you got, they're telling you, and then they rewind it 10 times, slow motion in front of your whole team, so you can't hide at all. And they're looking for you for an answer, and all you do is have your head down. Like that. That's another thing that a lot of kids don't understand. College football film sessions are not for the weak, man.
Man,
And
that's so funny you say that though. It's true though. It's true. And you just got to get ready for it. It's not to scare anybody. It's to just to help you prepare. That's the whole point of this podcast. It ain't scare nobody. If you guys want to play
no,
college athletics, this is the reality of it. And it's cool once you get there. If you understand the thing and you're ready for that kind of stuff, like that's the way you do it. Now, I do have a question, Jay. I want to inspire some of the younger athletes too, though. Like we joke around about Pocatello. Listen, the reason I have a bad taste in my mouth is my ex-wife that I was married to 10 years ago. She was from Pocatello.
okay.
So every time we had to go down there, I've got like a bad
Oh
taste in my mouth
man,
about the city. I just don't like Pocatello. No offense to anybody that's from there. I'm sure everything's great. That's your hometown. That's awesome. But like, I just can't stand the city itself. I don't like it. But the reality is there's a lot of colleges in like rinky-dink towns across the country, right? That's just how it is, especially at the junior college level. But dude, I'll tell you right now, I'm a Buckeyes fan. Okay, Columbus is a dump. Sorry to tell my Buckeyes fans that. I
I
think
know,
Columbus,
right?
Ohio is an absolute dump. It's an industrial town. I feel like it's really gross and old. So like it is what it is. And they've got 60,000 students that go to that school. So anyway,
Yeah,
it is what it is. So my question for you though, Jake, as a college student athlete, sometimes you're not going to go to the glamorous Los Angeles, Californias and stuff like
yeah.
that, or you're in South, like, the South Beach over, you're going to Miami or whatever, right? How do you find a way to not get yourself in trouble when you're in a certain environment that like when you're outside of the sport that you're competing and you're outside of football, I mean, it would be kind of easy to get yourself in trouble because there's not much
Yeah.
to do there. So how do you
Mhm.
what advice would you give to these kids to avoid that?
Man, shoot, that is a great question, and a lot of things that probably reflecting that I probably don't do a good enough job probably telling some of these athletes as we send them out on their way, right? Because I mean, sometimes you got to let them learn, but probably should make them know like some stuff like that. You got to have a good understanding of what you are trying to accomplish there. I'd say like remember your why. Like yeah, my why, my mom, and like my why is my mom and dad. Awesome, right? But like at the end of the goal, you have now gone to a different city or a different state or down the road or this school for a goal. My dad made sure to instill on me like don't lose fact of that, and it's really easy. It's easier said than done. But like if your back's against the wall and if you do a decision that's going to really affect your livelihood and where you're at, like you probably shouldn't do that. So with that being easier said than done, I would say the biggest thing that I had, and still have, it's the same circle, is I had a good group of friends, and we like they were their family. Still to this day, we're in a big group text. We actually all had. It's called like we called ourselves like Bengal tribe, like Idaho State Bengals, whatever. We actually got it tatted on us, all the good stuff. But it was always a joke, right? But you would never find me without my group of friends. So if I was close to making a dumb decision, or vice versa, probably me more than anyone, but if I was close to making a dumb decision, my boys made sure they were not going to go home without me, and vice versa. And so, like, that's why I love the guys I was with at Pocatello, and even the surrounding community that also had that same style of love. Is because you knew who you were with, and so I mean, you're not going to not make dumb decisions. I just hope moving forward that some people, if they're going to be in situations or anything, be around people you trust, be around people that you know love you, because that's hard to find, especially when you're 20, 21, 19 years old, to find something in that group. So when you have it, um, nurture it, treat people well in your surrounding community, wherever you go in school. It doesn't even have to be about athletics, because you never know when you'll need to network with someone. I would not be here today if I didn't network with so many people along the way. I've done things in this life that I never thought were attainable from where I'm originally from. If I didn't just shake hands and say hi to the next person, or meet, be with my friends in public, same group of friends, and say hi to this gentleman or ma'am that's sitting there next to us and just wanted to buy us a meal. Back in the day, you couldn't. Don't try and backtrack on me, NCAA. They never bought me a meal. And just so that it's just having people that genuinely love you around you, and so that to me is big because I'm still close to those people. They were
There you
all in my
go.
wedding line, you know.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
They were all
That's
there.
dope. There's a reason that they say that there's that quote, right? It's like, "Show me your friends, I'll show you your future." There's a reason they say
100%.
that, and I too relate to you in that regard, Jake, because I have a solid group of friends, man, and we've stayed friends all the way through high school, all the way up through now.
Mhm.
Not all of us follow the same religion, not all of us have the same
Right.
background, but we all are tight knit, and we all, encourage each other. When I went through my divorce a decade ago, like if it weren't for my friends, I would have been dead. I'm dead serious. Like there was some big times in my life where I was down and I hadn't talked to some guys for 5-6 years, but they were there for me when I needed them. So it was
Mhm.
good times. I'm a big believer in having a group of solid friends. So good for you for sharing that one. I would encourage the kids to take note of that one. Take note of that. If you're listening to this on your cell phone, take a notepad out and remind yourselves, get a good group of friends and stick with them.
Good group of friends,
But
man.
Jake, when you're looking, back at your time at Idaho State playing college football, what's one of your favorite memories? I want to know what one of your favorite memories was and why.
Man, to be honest with you, like one of my it probably is similar to that of like all because I have listened to quite a bit of yours. What other the athletes have expressed to you, like lining up on Saturday with those guys, it's a next to none feeling. No matter if you won or lost, like you can look in your brother's eyes and know like we're going to give everything we have. Like that honestly is like because that feeling's so hard to replicate in life. And so like and then leading up to everything, right? Like you got to remember, like I never won more than 3 games in my college career in one season, right? I signed with 35 people when I was a freshman. I finished with 6.
Wow.
Like so in between that 4 or 5 year gap, the attrition was just horrible, right? So I guess my biggest accomplishment was sticking with it, because everyone wants the glitz and glamour of college football. I'll be honest with you, that's less than 5% of this whole big showdown that you're seeing. Right, like the remaining percentage of that, or people in this grind of college football, you wake up on days like, what am I doing? Like, why did I do this? Like, life is so much easier if I just went to easier. Excuse me, let me be yourself. If I just could go to school and maybe find a job. Instead, I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. and get yelled at by my coaches. I'm going to go to school, maybe get heckled at by some fans, depending on where you're at. If you lose a close game, or depending if you're not a successful program, here in college, professors say maybe we shouldn't fund the team like in front of you, right? And you're supposed to bite your tongue and be a gentleman and keep it moving, like professional. But you're 19, 20 years old, and all you want to do is yell at them. So you go to class and you turn around and you do study and film, all for a result that's not shown on Saturday, and then you turn around, you got to go to practice every day, and then you got to take care of your body. Then you got to do homework, 7 days a week, every day, and you're not getting that result. Like so, I guess my biggest accomplishment, and it's probably a weird one, man, but outside of probably meeting my wife, like is sticking with it, like because I can really attest to that. And let me get on a tangent on this real quick, Shane. Sorry to talk your ears
No,
off.
it was great. I
People
love
want
it.
to ask like why I'm so passionate about my journey at Idaho State. 5 years, two different head coaches, four different position changes. I think I had five different position coaches, all in 5 years of time, right? And so I read, so like that's what, like, so when you think of it, when I'm telling you, everyone sees the Oregons and that, even they have their down year, but imagine being on the opposite side of the spectrum where no one cares about or watching you, or maybe they do, but you're just not having that success. And then you, as an 18 to 21-year-old kid, have to wake up every day and battle through some mental battles of just because you're not finding success, right? Because it's hard, and but you stick through it. You go through all these different position coaches, and you have a different message from one head coach to another. One might believe in you. You were his guy. Well, you were his guy that recruited you. This other coach they bring in tells you you leading to your junior year. If you're not starting, I'm going to cut. And so it's like that's why I'm passionate about, because the journey is not. I mean, what do they say? The hustle is sold separately or something. The dream is free, but the hustle is sold separately. I
Ooh.
really attest to that, and I really believe in that, because I promise you not. There's 95, like I put 97+% that people could not walk that journey that I did at Idaho State, and then come out and graduate and still be moving forward. All my boys, some of them left 1 year not starting, out the door. And there was no transfer portal back in the day, so you were either at Division II or you were at the crib, chilling, no feet up. Next, got to go find a job. You know.
Eh. Jake, that's the cool part about this story, though, and that's what I'm glad that you're on the show, because we hear the glitz, the glamour, and all that stuff. Shoot, I just got back from the Ohio State Oregon game on Saturday because I was down in Autzen for that, and I mean, I get to see the big time programs. It's like, it's the big stuff. But on the other side of that, which is the vast majority, don't get to see the glitz, the glamour, the $200 million programs every single year, bringing in $200 million in their athletics department just because they're like, that's not how it works all the time. And for you to be able to do that, man, I see it like today that you can just jump ship if you want to, there's goods and bads to that. But the fact that you were able to put that together, I think that speaks to your character, one, but it's also a big reason why you're successful as a human being outside of athletics, which is it's huge. I think that you can teach a lot of kids a lot of things. I hope more people will get to connect with you. A lot of these young athletes that haven't yet, I hope they get to, because that's real life right there. You went through what real life is like, and still made it through. And it's, dude, I'm just trying to imagine it, putting your helmet and pads on, going in, doing the work, and having to do the thing, because you're lining up every Saturday and not winning a ton of them, but you're getting hit. You have to do all the stuff. You have to go to school, but getting hit, it's a physical game, and you had to keep doing it. You put your pads on, and you did it again and again and again. Come to work, do the thing. That's hard to do when it's a physical game like that, and a mental battle with all the other things. That's crazy. So good on you, man. That's really cool. I'm glad you shared that. So when you transitioned out of college, Jake, what were the next steps for you in the next part of your life once, the football days were over?
Yeah. So I had I guess kind of like my own little goal and journey in trying to figure out the avenue of law enforcement, right? And so I'd say this, like, yes, college coaches are smart. They do their homework. They know what you're trying to be usually, right? And so when I went on my recruiting trip, I had met the Pocatello Police Department. I had, Tony Manu, who's now the sheriff of Bannock County. He's a longtime Highland High School football coach. Three of his boys D1 football. Oh, excuse me. So they had let me meet these community members, right? Now, the one thing I'll say about Pocatello, a couple things. It has everything you need to play football, right? Just so people know, it has everything you need to play football, right? And so second is that community is prideful. And if you do well in that community, they treat you well back. And so through networks and stuff like that, it just was like, it was going to happen. So I put my application in for the Pocatello Police Department. Didn't know I was going to stay there, honestly. At the time, me and my wife were dating, and she's from Utah, but she didn't necessarily want to go back to Utah. So I was like, okay, well, I'm not going back to Washington. I ain't doing it. And so Pocatello, perfect. I already knew the captain. I knew the chief of police, Scott Marchand, former Idaho State Bengal. Akilah Lacey, former Idaho State Bengal. Lance Cartwright, for the former Idaho State Bengal. Man, I'm probably missing so many different names too. So along those connections of those police officers that I had, it was bound to be, I guess, right? So I networked into it, got right out of college after working at Jason Meter's car dealership under his Field Meter, Toyota, Ford, whatever. It was just waiting on my opportunity after being a service advisor. Got into law enforcement at Pocatello Police Department. Did about 3 years there. And then, it's actually pretty crazy. You start networking, right? And next thing you know, you end up in Boise, Idaho. Because I knew some former BSU players, or some other older guys above me that were Idaho State Bengals, that was on Boise Police Department. Some of my old coworkers that transferred. So I actually had transferred over to Meridian Police Department in 2017. And then I had gotten into the schools. So I was actually an SRO at Meridian High School for 3 years. Hit the ground running with that. Loved it. Love the community, man. It's actually pretty funny. Me and my wife joke. Still to this day, when I walked in that door in 2018, when I was there SRO, I still sometimes can't go out to public. It's just weird because now they're older, like 21 now, and like not get recognized by some of the kids and be like, "Hey, is that Officer Pele?" I'm like, "Bro, like, I'm hey, you're 21. Like, wow, holy moly. I guess I'm getting old, but it's always in positive light. Like, I loved working what I did there. And then shoot, man, I know I've been keeping you quick, so I'll try and keep this story very small.
This is great. Keep
Um,
talking.
I'll never forget. So I'm a police officer. I'm now, shoot, let me think, 2015 first day. I'm now 8 years, 9 year, no, so I'm 7 years, going on 7 years in police department. Mind you, I'm still coaching high school football because my administration from Pocatello, obviously, it was all former football players that we had hired. And then at Meridian, I was kind of like, it was kind of different, right? However, both the chiefs that I had worked for, Jeff Levy and then Chief Bastrachia, they were both very supportive of community involvement. So I coached high school football all throughout when I was a police officer. So I would do what many of them are doing now, like Twan Lin from Boise Police Department. He's still a Keela Lacey, Pocatello. Like I would go to work at the school days from 6 a.m. or 6:30 a.m. till up until that last bell. It's like I had to get home to change. So turn around, go change, go back to the school and coach football. And so I actually, at the time when I was Meridian's SRO, as Rocky Mountains High School varsity defensive line coach under Chris Kulik. So I would make my way back and forth. It was always fun at the school because Meridian, I love all the kids there, but they gave me the most crap. But it was always out of love. I'll never forget this, but everyone will know these names: Ty Tanner, Gage Tanner, and Jax Tanner. That's the most recent. And then there's Coy. I had coached alongside their dad, Mike Tanner, for a couple years. I had coached their sons, or his sons. I had coached Spencer Need's sons, and I had coached Chad Jacobson's sons. I had known them for quite a long time since I moved here in 2017. I never asked what they did for work. One day I'm like, oh man, 7 years in this thing. I just was wondering if I could do this police work for 25 more years. It was on my clock. I'm like, man, that's a lot of time. If the right opportunity presents itself, I'd entertain it. So through networking, right, and never actually asking Mike until one day we're sitting at the 50-yard line trying to have perfect practice on Thursday. So like it's special teams day. So we're like folded up. Here's the trick when you coach or even when you're playing, you got to teach the kids is if you look ahead and talk, your head coach will never know you're having a good time, right? So it's like all the kids in silent, we all know we're looking ahead, but we're all having fun talking to each other. At the time, I'm sitting there talking with Mike, and I finally asked him after all those kids I coached that I mentioned, what he did for work. And then, no joke, he just took a shot. He had some reasons of why, but he had a contract over to me within a week. Still knew no idea what his job was, what he did, but I signed the thing. I totally signed it. And I signed it because I did some homework on him, not the job itself. I still didn't understand the job. I just wanted to know who he was as a person that I'm not seeing. And so through some community connections, I would ask, who's this gentleman, blah, 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 blah. And everyone told me if I was to roll the dice, I'd roll it with him. And so I gave up everything, in terms of people don't think, when you're 7 years into a 30-year career that has a very good retirement, that people don't leave, and I just believed in this guy. And so now through the networking of football and connections, I'm in medical device sales with Stryker. I work with surgeons daily, and Mike's still my boss. So even though I went south of town on him, just left the road on Linder when we had a coaching change, then I didn't stick around for it, only just because I had to get a couple years with my guy Zamberlin because I turned him down enough that I finally said yes because Coach Kulig left. But yeah, so now I'm in the medical device game, and it's been fun. I don't regret it whatsoever. I've gotten a little bit more, I guess, not free. I guess freedom, respectfully, is the way to say, it, but I've gotten a little bit more time to balance to be with, have a career, but also be able to have a little time with my kids a little bit more than I probably would have had at my last job. No more shift work as much. But if I do get caught on shift work, I'm like, this is peanuts. Y'all just want me to
Yeah.
come in one time. It's been like 5 months. Call me some more, man. Come on now. I used to do this all the time. Like, so that's where I'm at now. And they was all thanks to the football connections.
Man, that's again, I will recommend to anyone who's listening to this, young athletes, college athletes, whatever, tap into your network. I love that you mentioned it, Jake. Like you're a good people person anyway. Like you get along with most people. I can already tell that. But like just understand what you have. Don't take it for granted. If you've got connections on the football field, you got coaches, you've got even professors at school, teammates, whatever, that one day the playing days will end, but that'll extend
Yeah.
far beyond the field for you. And obviously it has. And I love that wherever you were at and wherever you are, you're always just networking. And networking always has this like negative, stigma or whatever you want to call it. Like people say, oh, you're networking. And it doesn't mean you're like looking for other work. That's not what networking always
Yeah,
means. It just
yeah.
means you're building relationships with people. You're
Yeah.
connecting with people. And that's a good thing to do. You were a cop, you're an SRO, building relationships, connections with the community, and it stemmed over to being when you were a football coach, building connections there. And that ended up helping you with a profession and blesses you and your family. I think that's super, super cool. I didn't realize that you were connected with all those guys in that space. I remember I thought
Yeah.
the same thing, Jake. I was like, what the heck does like the Need family do? Like, I was like, I knew all these guys, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, Jason War, who's an old VP of
Oh
mine from
yeah.
Meridian, but good old Jason War, he was my
He's
VP my senior year. So I've stayed connected to War my whole life, but yeah, it's just I was like, what are you guys doing? Like, what is going on now?
man.
See that you're connected in that space too. Um, Here in the Treasure Valley, though, obviously you're still coaching, and I wanted to talk about the In the Trenches Academy. Like I saw this get formed. We see a lot of different, I see a lot of quarterback training. I see a lot of
Hmm.
skill development, just speed, strength, and conditioning. But you guys did something a little different with this. Can you talk to us a little bit about this, Jake? In the Trenches, what is In the Trenches, and what are you guys trying to accomplish
Yeah.
here with this particular, I guess you'll call it academy? Educate us a little bit on what it is.
Yeah. Man, so to give a little background real quick before I jump into what it is, it necessarily, I have a business partner who runs offensive line. I run defensive line, right? We have a timestamp, like no joke. I had actually, when I thought about jumping into college football, had jumped into my guy's DMs when he was at Montana State football, when he was the offensive line coach under Jeff Chubb. Jumped in his DMs, fellow Polynesian guy. So, and honestly, I just knew they were doing really well. So I just was like, "Oh, let me see if he at least hit me back." So my relationship formed with him back then. And ironically, when he had stepped down, he just had helped me with in terms of where that came from. He had helped me navigate maybe if I wanted to pursue that dream. Again, networking, right? Connections, right? I just hit him up and he hit me back, and he actually put me into some contacts with people that I never would have had. A couple years later, he decided for some family reasons he resigned from college football. And you resign when your head coach puts out an article on you to tell the community you resign, and especially if you know Jeff Choate, he's gonna tell you if you resign or if you're fired, right? And they put out an article that he stepped down for his family. I tried everything to keep him, blah 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 blah. He moves to Boise, Idaho. Networking has a weird way of doing things you would never think of, right? Because he moves to Boise, Idaho, of all places, which is where I am. Remember, I've never met the dude. I've only met him through DMs. Like I've talked to him on the phone. It's a guy that looks like me. Probably raised around a lot of similar people that we found out. Our families crossed paths in San Jose, California. Um, so like when he comes to Boise, it's all love. You would think we're brothers, right? And we are. We really are. But like we sat down one day and I said, and I told this to D Mike actually when I was at SRR in Meridian. And D Mike actually has a timestamp of a text that one day we'll post. Like, because this didn't just happen overnight. I said, bro, I'm really thinking of wanting to launch an offensive line, a defensive line specific training football, fundamental based training. And I said, I just need to find my guy. I knew who my guy was, but he had a lot of things going on within his family in terms of like just like daily life that I've now found out being a father. Never knew nothing about it, right? So he had to get some things. He was just handling his everyday life, working, providing his father, his lovely wife, all that. Um, so one day it became a reality because we had some group of parents that had pulled me aside last year, late last year, like right before the state title, and said, "We'd love for you to put this dream together." I had talked about it, right? Shout out Zach Rupp, Rowan's dad, Mike Tanner, Jack's dad, even Quit and Michael, D coordinator at Rocky, and there's a couple other community members as well that were involved in it. And they said, like, well, you should probably do it. I said, okay, this is what it is. But I have a guy. I just need my guy to say yes. Because I never had told him, like, we were going to pull the trigger because this was actually expedited by a whole year. And so I called Josh up on late November night, and I'm trying to plan some stuff. And, here we are. He agrees. So I got my guy. Next thing you know, I know nothing about running no business. My wife ends up securing all the proper lawyer documents, opening up the LLC, like all this stuff within 2 weeks before Christmas. This thing's launching on January 6th. And I'm coaching. I'm looking at her like, what do you mean I need a business and insurance? I'm just going to coach. I knew nothing. So a gathering of the families, our wives, our spouses, me and Josh's spouses, kind of run the daily the thoughtful things, the things you should be thinking of when you're a business owner, right? To have allowed us to run this thing because it is a business. So let's just call it a business. But what it is it's offensive and defensive line fundamental training. So our whole goal was to get people in the door to train big fellas. Because here's the thing, everyone got a 7-on-7 team. Now, I ain't knocking on 7-on-7. There's benefit in 7-on-7, right? Whether anyone like it or not, there's still a benefit if done right. Um, Everyone got sports performance training, whether it's the big dogs in the off the field or the rocking army, or maybe some of the dudes that still do it out of love of their heart, but are still doing great for the kids, but you just don't see them doing it on social media. But everyone got skill position trainers. There's quarterbacks, Kaizen quarterback out there slanging the quarterback. When you ask who you've trained in the Valley for quarterbacks, it's him. You got wide receivers. You got Shane Rhodes. You got Sean Modster. You got Ty Flanagan running the running backs. You got all these trainers, but it's all lining up the skill positions. You got the secondary, right? You got Just. You got so many other good Tamir. All these great guys, and then you even have like Armand, who's a former BSU, who dips into the skill and the O line and D line. So everyone's there, right? Lay it out for you. But ain't no one said I'm going to focus specifically on the big boys. And so I had wanted to bring that with my boy Josh together collectively because I can't do it without him. That's what we formed. So it actually came through networking. There's a big dog in this West Coast out in Utah at Ofa Academy, which means love in Tonkin. And so we had, through some mutual connections, through Josh and his connections, had known Will Kofe and a couple of them. And I actually had gone up there and I had mirrored some other people in the realm of how to do this thing the right way. We had called on them and how to do this thing the right way because it's not just like we came up with this overnight. We had dreamed about it, we had plotted about it, and we connected with people that we wanted to be like. Right. And so when we brought this thing within less than 4 weeks from that December parent meeting to the 1st of January, we launched a full-blown offensive line and defensive line training academy that is geared to the big boys of middle school to high school, even into the college if our kids come back and want to train. And we welcome all the kids around the valley. And man, it's gotten so big in a fast amount of time. I'm just proud of the kids and the work they've done, and ultimately, I'm really thankful for my wife and Josh and his wife Tino, because without like the collective group, this will never have happened.
That is so dope. See, that's what being around the area, that was the first I'd ever heard of something like that. Like everything you just said, everything's geared towards skill position players, which is fine. But I've always wondered, like, how did the offensive and defensive linemen actually
Yeah.
learn technique? Because you talk about it, like I've talked to a couple guys, Jake, where they get to the collegiate world or even at the professional, and the technique is missing. They get trained on it a little bit more in depth when they get to that level because they have specialists as coaches when they get there. But like they don't have that training all season long where they're learning techniques and they're learning leverage points or learning different things. Like there's a lot to it on each position on the line. I mean, it's
Yeah.
an extremely important part of the game, arguably the most important if you
Yeah.
want to be real about it. So,
And
oh, go ahead. Go
and
ahead.
just so you know, we make it real clear to these kids, like we teach, we don't like Shane, like you have to, we don't do all the sexy training stuff. These are high school kids, you know what I mean? Like this is truly foundational stuff. And then we always make it clear, like we are an extension of your staff, whether you see that or not. In terms of the kids, like we are not better than your staff members. We all have been coaches, so we know how that is. We're not telling you to say this is how I'm doing it on Saturdays in the off season with Coach Jake and Coach T. And if you do that, don't ever walk back in these doors. Please don't do that to us. Because we've been there, we don't want to do that. We want to just train kids fundamentally right and then give them some stuff to add in their toolbox because it has been missing, but just to give them to the toolbox so they could be hopefully get them better when they show up with their respective team coming in the fall and everything, that they could be just a better athlete, better player, better teammate, see some competition. Um, because man, when you talk recruiting, right? I'll blow this one out too because some people will probably come for me on this one. But can you tell me what the top two positions are in the state that get recruited the most, or what group? The
I'm assuming it's the
offensive line
lineman.
and defensive line.
Yeah, it's the lineman, I'm sure, yeah.
Period. I just told this to LeGarry Mitchell last year. He'll tell you this story. Like, he just committed to Boise State. He's a junior linebacker at Meridian High School. Last year when I coached him, I said, I don't know how this is going to. I just said, I don't remember the last time. I can't think true FBS full ride scholarship offer from a middle linebacker in the state of Idaho that I can't think of. I'm sure there is because I was trying to figure out from all my small town schools that I love. It's like, who's an FBS middle linebacker kid that I can think of right out the gate in Idaho? Probably miss him, but I was like, man, I can't think of him off the top of my head in the last 8 years or something like that, right? Like that's how hard recruiting can be in the skill position, even specifically linebacker, right? So I had told him that, right? And just to put that in perspective, however, if you look into our building, like LeGarry, LeGarry's the first middle linebacker that has an FBS offer in that state of Idaho in probably, I'd say at least 6-7 years, like FBS true full ride,
Yeah.
which Boise State doesn't give out often, because everyone knows in this community, it's hard to earn. But man, what is fruitful in this state still to this day, back in the era way before these kids that we have had from like was it Eric Cotton to the Tommy Tony Eyes to the Tristan Hodges to all the Isa Kelamete. There's so many. There's a Madison kids like Coeur d'Alene, Coach Hout, right? Or Byron Hout used to be a coach. Man, there's so many greats along this path of Idaho football. Hey, man, offensive line and defensive line are fruitful here in this state. And now what you're seeing in this, right, is, you know, some of the top recruits that we've had a small journey of, but some of the you're seeing, and it's because they're working the right way. And we're just happy to be a part of it, to just influence it just a little, because it's been fun to bring it to the Valley because, man, it gets active in those sessions. And all we can hope is to make them better. And then, the big goal, too, is when you talk about some of these kids fundamentally and everything, is bringing them to an area. Well, two things. Let's talk about two things. Josh and I, we're not going to tax families, because this stuff is expensive. But football is supposed to be is an affordable sport, right? Like,
Yeah.
this isn't travel like 24/7. This is an affordable game. It's supposed to be, right? No shopping. Like, this is getting expensive going the route it's going for
Yep.
these middle school, high school football people, right? We weren't going to tax families. We're going to hold our foundation on football and fundamentals, right? And then we were going to develop kids. We wanted actually nothing of what you guys have seen on social media, this 5-on-5 stuff, these live reps between other teams. We just wanted what was in our building. However, when you run a business and you run things and you want what's best for these kids, you do have to adapt, right? And some of the kids want a competition. So what we have now done and pride ourselves is bringing them to real competition, real events, real time, making it worth their money. We ain't going to 20 tournaments. I don't. If you do, that's fine. Well, I'm not. I got a family. I got kids. I got a job that pays my bills. We just in football off season training. We're not. I'd rather train you 20 times and then go to 3 tournaments, one here, 2 in Utah, and call it a day. That's football. Like we're done. So yeah. But back to it's been the most fruitful position group. And our only hope is to keep elevating that.
It's so crazy, man. Going back to, I mean, I graduated in 2006, and like, Byron Hout was the next year at Lake City, and I remember watching
Mm-hmm.
him. Dude, he was a monster. People think of him as a linebacker because that's what he ended up being ultimately at Boise State, but he was a lineman, dude, and he was unstoppable. People,
Oh,
if
even
he,
Shane McKellen, right? Isn't he a Idaho kid?
McClellan,
Yeah,
McClellan's another
he's a
one. Yeah,
legend. You
dude,
know.
there's some big boys around here. Even at Meridian, I had a guy, Valu. Valu was a lineman. He was our left
Yeah.
tackle at Meridian High. Freaking 6'5", 300. He's massive. He's a tank. He went to Snow College. But like a lot of those guys,
Oh
it is
yeah.
brutal.
Hey, Snow.
Dude. Yeah,
Hey, kids don't know about Snow College. That
dude,
was the spot right there.
dude. From what I was told, that place was nasty with athletes, and especially the big boys,
Yeah.
dude. And a lot of the Polynesian culture. There's a
Yeah.
lot of Polynesian linemen over there at Snow, doing their
That was a
thing.
quick
So,
2-year stop to get the grades right. Like 2 year stop. Gotta didn't do it right in high school. Got to do it over here. Darn
hey,
it.
but they were there, man. They were loading up. So it's cool that you say that, Jake. Real quick for those who might be interested. I mean, how does one who wants to be trained by you guys in the off season, in the trenches, so to speak, how do they find more information about you guys?
Yeah. So our Instagram's at In the Trenches Academy 208. On Twitter, it's 208 ITTA. And we're pretty active on it. We repost all of our kids' stuff, just promoting them in the right light, and then you'll see our stuff going. But it's been fun.
Hey, remind me the Twitter one. I'm going to actually pull it up while we're talking. In the
Yeah,
trenches.
the Twitter is at 208 ITTA.
I don't think I'm
Yeah.
following you on Twitter, and I'm pretty active on Twitter. There we go. Now we are. Cool. We'll make sure to post this on Twitter. It's funny because Jake, I mean, you're from the same era as me, pretty much. It's like Twitter's still like a thing I use. I still use it a lot for athletics. I connect with a lot of college coaches on there. Talk about basketball and stuff. I'm always
Yeah.
connecting with collegiate, coaches, and I'm just connecting on Twitter's a great tool for networking if you use it right.
Oh,
I don't know why the kids don't use it as much as they should. I mean, if I'm a high school athlete, screw the Instagram highlights. I'm on Twitter connecting with different colleges, different athletes, different people. But anyway, that's just me. I have my own opinions. I'm an old head still. So cool. We'll make sure to link this in the description. I want you guys to check out in the description the Instagram and the Twitter pages for In the Trenches to follow Jake and what they've got going on over there. That's super exciting. Last question for you, Jake. What is the biggest life lesson that sports have taught you?
oh, the biggest life lesson. Biggest life lesson. Man, that's a hard one, Shay. Man, shoot, that's a loaded one. The biggest life lesson. I'd say, like, man, when your back's against the wall, you know, to be honest with you, when your back's against the wall, if you prepare and you have confidence in yourself and what you're doing, man, you're gonna get by any wall in front of you. And that's just real stuff because if it's all the same stuff that we probably hear in some other way, but man, sports has taught me so much. As I just like I told you, yeah, from all the head coaching changes to the position changes, position coaches, it might not you might get punched in the face, but if you get back and try again, man, eventually the ball will roll your way. You just got to find a way.
I love it, man. And I think you basically did answer that question when you were talking about your Idaho State experience. I think just showing up to work is just something you've been doing. You show up to work every day. It's and one thing that I want to remind everyone of what you said that stood out to me still was at the very beginning you said remembering your why and your parents were yours, like you were talking about that, like just remembering your why. I think a lot of people, girls and guys, forget that. It's easy to forget your why when you're in the thick of things and you're in the storm, so to speak, where you're not like really seeing the success and stuff. But if you know your why and you remind yourself of that frequently, I think that can help you get through some of that stuff. Some of the tough times, it helps you put the helmet on, put the pads on, and go to work. So, dude, such a good interview, Jake. I appreciate your time, brother. Thank you so much for joining me and taking the time out of your busy schedule with your wife and kids. Do you have 2 kids or 1?
I got 2. I got 2 rascals.
Yeah, 2 rascals. Awesome. Okay, so I know what it's like to be a dad and a husband. So I'm going to get you back to your family. But I want to remind everybody, make sure to hit that follow button. If you're on YouTube, I'm trying to build my YouTube platform. Never did that before. All my listeners are on the audio side, but still trying to get my YouTube channel to grow. I've only got 500 and some odd followers. So please hit the follow button. Consider, subscribing on YouTube. And we'll be coming to you guys next week with another interview. Take care. Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of my show. Now, if you could go and do me a favor, head over to iTunes, give me 5 stars, and leave me a review, it would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your support.